It's a sure thing. Change, change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Now do change. Change.
Good afternoon and welcome to Spirit Cafe. So delighted you could be with us today. Let us begin with the land acknowledgement. We work, live, and play on the historical and traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. And as we gather from many places on Turtle Island, we as settlers are grateful for the opportunity to meet here. And we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years, including the Métis, Inuit, and all Indigenous peoples. And though I'm not a person of African descent, I'm committed to continually acting in support of and in solidarity with Black communities seeking freedom and reparative justice in light of the history and ongoing legacy of slavery and continuous impact of this in the Black communities in Canada and the US. So as part of this commitment, I acknowledge the history, the legacy, but also the decisions we need to make moving forward. We recognize our oneness, we realize our history, and we choose to create a new reality. We are one. Well, welcome to Spirit Cafe. Wow, our guest today is the remarkable Mel Horvath. And here's my co-host, Cheryl Rogers. Hello, sweetie.
Hi, good to be back. Good to be back with you. I was back last week, but I didn't see you here. So lovely to be with you.
I was skipping.
I know. But that's okay. You were doing things that were important to you, and that's important for us to do, right? Things that are important to us.
Yeah, I was in a wonderful convention last week. That was really, really beautiful. So that was a great way. Now, I have not done Mel's introduction.
Mm-hmm.
So let me see if I can.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about Mel.
All right.
Yes. Mel Horvath-Lucid was ordained in 2014 in the spiritualist tradition, forgive me, is a mediator and a spiritual director. She is also a healthy congregations facilitator with additional education, working with congregations through times of change and transition. She resides in Waterloo, Ontario, and works in Restorative Justice. She is a creative who enjoys writing, painting, and singing, and is a lifelong learner with a deep passion for spirituality, psychology, sexuality, and restorative justice. Welcome, Mel.
Welcome.
I just want to say, Mel, I'm so excited you accepted this invitation. Thank you. Mel is honestly a person that I can have so many different discussions with on so many different topics. And every time we do, I walk away excited and exhilarated and feeling like, yes, we've been able to communicate in a way that we understand each other, even with things that aren't being said, right? Just love our conversations when we get together, Mel, which isn't often enough. So
Mel and I just met a few minutes ago, and already I am hooked.
Absolutely, Mel. Yeah. So I'll just, before Mel comes in, I just want to let you know that today what we are going to be talking about and why I thought of Mel for today was about her beautiful family. Mel used to attend Unity Kitchener. She used to do talks for us. She was quite involved even before I was there. And I remember one day watching the congregation and seeing her family in the congregation sitting there and supporting her. And I remember feeling so just in awe of what a wonderful family they were, that they support each other in everything they do. Wherever one is doing something, the others go and support them. And I started learning a little bit more about Mel's family and the dynamics and how they parent, which I was in awe of. And I just thought, you know what, Mel, you got to come and talk to us and tell us about your family, and show us this great example of how you guys live together.
Yeah, well, it's funny for me because I thought you couldn't actually ask for a worse speaker on parenting if what we're talking about is getting it right. I think what I've learned most about parenting, probably one of the most freeing moments, came when I was in school for spiritual direction, and the teacher was talking particularly about our shadow side and the mother wound, and talking about each of us in this mother wound. I put up my hand and I said, so you mean all of us will have a mother wound? And the teacher's like, yes. And I was like, well, shit, here I am trying to write, or there's like a perfect way. You're telling me no matter what I do, there's going to be a wound.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back to the drawing board and decided to do things differently. And the first one was, the only thing I can really give my kids is presence. The only thing we can really give one another is our presence. And actual potent presence is very different.
Mm-hmm.
Unconditional love, but honesty about the reality of the struggle, the mess of it all. And I think the first thing we can do is mistake and look at somebody from the outside and go, ooh, that family's got it together. I assure you, we do not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we do go it together. And that's what you were talking about.
I
Is
love
that
go it together.
that
Yeah.
our kids, two of them have now moved out, and they come home.
Mm-hmm.
And we have these points of connection.
Mm-hmm.
And two of them will be departing soon for school. And it's this creating, it really is that old saying about creating a balance between roots and wings.
Mm-hmm.
But not thinking that I know what will set flight to my kids or what will root them, but
Absolutely.
rather simply choosing to be present, choosing to be honest about this absolutely blend of everything, or what I call the shitty magnificence of each of us and of this existence and of what it looks like to be human and journey this life. It's absolutely a mixed bag.
Well, that's
Absolutely.
beautiful. And I think one of the things I heard from Michelle Obama, she talked about the importance of raising the child you have, not the one you thought you were going to get or the way you thought it was going to be. And I love one of the things for me that's been most important, I have 4 children, and the most important thing to me is to be honest, honest about my past, which sometimes don't really want to tell you that, but I'm not going to lie to you either. So I think honesty as well helps, but seeing them for who they are, or holding the space. I love what you said about presence, figuring out, how I need to be with each child, because they're all different.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I've always remembered from Cahill Gibran, because it was so important to me as well, is your children come through you, not from you. You may house their bodies, but not their souls. And that for me was so important, because some of us tend to mistakenly think our children belong to us.
Yeah.
And they really don't. We are just here for whatever reason to facilitate their presence in this world. So that's beautiful. Mel, tell us about your family. How many kids do you have, and how old are they?
I could, except for I'm going to jump over probably the most important, potent thing, which is what you just said, which is this idea that our kids belong to us.
Yeah.
And how then what I've noticed is how limiting the experience becomes for our kids when we view parenting from this belonging space, and that my identity then becomes invested in what my child does or does not do,
Exactly.
and how crippling that becomes for both myself, who loses myself in that experience of parenting, and for our experience of being a child, where now every success I have is co-opted and every failure I have is co-opted. And it really doesn't become about even the struggle that the child's experiencing anymore. Then it just becomes about, oh, what will people think? Or what about this? Or what about that? And so there's something really, really powerful about understanding that I actually have this incredible gift of journeying with my children to their degree and willingness to invite me in.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when they invite me in, now that's sacred. Now I'm going to be really present to whatever it is. But if I'm in my own shit, so to speak, then I'm not present. Now I'm somewhere else. And so it has been an interesting journey to see that my shoes need to be the shoes I'm walking in, and their shoes are the shoes they're walking in. And if they're inviting me into their process, into their human experience, into their journey, it's like this moment of understanding how sacred that is, that I'm in a ritual, I'm in a ceremony of sorts to be invited in. So to touch on your question, I have 5 children, and I've experienced motherhood from every possible vantage point. Biological children, stepchildren, foster, and adoption. And I do have occasionally friends of our children that I would say come in, and there's the gift of holding space for them in those moments too, and partners now of some of our kids. So it's a blend of 2 that I brought to the relationship, a nearly 21-year-old and a 17, soon to be 18-year-old. And then there is my stepson, who's just turned 20, stepdaughter, who's 17. And then together we have our youngest, who is now 13.
Beautiful, beautiful. You have such a beautiful way with words. That's another reason I just love having a conversation with you. It's like, wow, you have such a beautiful way with words. And what you said was so important before, after I made a comment and before I asked that question. And I didn't want to take away from that, but I also wanted to introduce your family because it is so in my mind, unique. And I loved what you spoke about journeying together and not being, there is no ideal family, but really going with them and being with them, being present. For myself, I've come to, and maybe this is just a way of helping me feel better about myself. I say to myself, we do the best we can with what we know when we know it. And to be truthful, I feel that I only really became more aware of these things that we're talking about later on in life, and that my kids, that I feel, I know there's no blame and there's no shame, but I do feel like I wasn't the mother that I really wanted to be, if that makes any sense, right?
Probably every mom could say that. Part of my journey has been going to my children going, okay, do you remember when I did this or I said that? I am so sorry. Because I'm carrying guilt and they're going, I don't even remember.
I know. That's crazy. But one of the things that my youngest son said to me was, do you know what my problem is? And I said, what? Tell me. And he said, you made me feel special. And I really had to think about that, right? I made him feel special but I didn't tell him that everybody was special in their own way. So when he found out that we all are unique individuals and that he wasn't, I think in his mind, he was better than others, or he was, I don't know, but that for him was an awakening, right? So that's just an example. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because we can think that there, like I said, we cannot bypass that there will be a mother wound, and that we were never meant to bypass our humanness. What I'm noticing though is there's a quote that says, Mystic Heart, and I cannot remember who wrote it in this moment, but it says, "It is not what we do, it is how well and fast we can integrate with what is. It is not what we do, it is how well and fast we can integrate with what is." And what I've noticed is my own tendency to want to change what is, whether it's my child's suffering or pain or something else, and rather meeting them there and saying, okay, I can be with you in this, and also giving myself permission. I think about when my mom was dying, and particularly I look back at that, and in her final moments of life, there was maybe 2 hours before that I remember leaving the room and just needing to have a breath. I could not be present with my own pain in that moment. And then as her breathing changed, and I knew that the time was near, I was looking back so ashamed that I was actually, there I was with 2 pillows against my ears, because hearing her breath was just so daunting. And I look back and I think, but I was supposed to be. No, I was doing absolutely the very best I could to be present. And in those moments, I did what I could, and that was enough. Because I think that that's the torture piece that we put ourselves through for no reason is, I wish I was somebody different than who I was at that point doing what I was doing, rather than I look back and it was that was the very best I could do. And the generosity that we so frequently will give to one another is what we're meant to actually figure out how to turn back toward ourselves. Yeah.
Very important. Makes me quite emotional. So it shows me there's still a lot of work to do there.
Well, and the best part is the work's not ever done. And so if we knew that, if we knew that there were that it really is the journey, that we're not arriving, we're not going to arrive to some echelon of being. I'm not, and also that that's not static. It's moment to moment. And in some moments I'll touch in and go, hey, I showed up the way I really wanted to. And in other moments I won't. But what comes up for me is two phrases I think we don't say enough. And you mentioned one of them, Barbara. I was wrong. I was wrong. How quickly can I get to that point and say, hey, I thought I knew something here, and I said it with conviction, and I didn't know, and that's okay. And then the other piece of that too, I think, is another 3-letter word, or three-word sentence that we don't say enough, which is, I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
And particularly, there's a story that comes up for me with my now 17-year-old son. Parenting in a pandemic, that was the most wildest thing, because there wasn't even any precedent for what to do. Now I'm just parenting in this place where it's like, who knows what we're doing. And so it came to the point where I recognized that to ask my children to stay home was going to be more detrimental to their mental health. Like, their mental health was being more impacted than the risk of how do we integrate and learn to coexist with this reality. And so my son had talked to me. He had said he wanted to go out to a party, and he could feel my anxiety the night of the party. And, I could say that I did my best to hide it. It doesn't really matter. He could feel it. And he said, Mama, I don't have to go if you're anxious. And I said, you know what, my love, you do not have to manage my anxiety.
Mm.
You do not have to manage my anxiety. I manage my anxiety. And he said, but I just want to do what's right. And I said to him, oh my goodness, just tell me what's right. And I said to him, oh my gosh, you still think I know something? I don't know anything. I'm making this up. I'm
I love
literally
it.
making this up. There is no precedent. We know
Yeah.
nothing. We know
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
We're just doing the best we can. And what we know from that conversation was that you're going to go do this thing and it's going to be what it is. And
Yeah.
it's okay. Now go.
Right.
And I'm going
And
to
there's
survive.
those moments that I think over and over again where what our kids will do is look to us for certainty that we can't
Yeah.
give them.
Yeah.
So then for me, that's where we're instilling courage and intuition and wisdom and power, empowering to go
Yes.
out into this world where risk is certain, where you will fail, where you're going to make mistakes, where you're going to fall down, right? I
Yeah.
was thinking before the show started when when Cheryl was talking what she likes about me to Barbara and you know, sort of like Mel has this way with words or something like that. And I thought my internally was, nah, it's just that I'm really good at falling down. I do it often. So I've gotten better at what it looks like to fall down and get back up. And I think in some ways that's really been the process with my kids. Oh yeah, if you're going to live at all, like if you're going to do anything, you're going to fall down. And so for me, it's just been, yeah, I'm going to trip and fall on my face again. And what does
And it's
getting back
okay.
up look like?
And I'll
And
survive it.
Yeah. Yeah. And Fiona says, I love Mel's authenticity. And absolutely, that's another reason I just have enjoying Mel's authenticity. I just love having conversations with you, Mel, because I know it comes from your heart, from your experience, not from your head, which is just so beautiful. So thank you for that. And oh my goodness, you know, all these things that you're saying, I just, Barbara, what do you want to share?
Well, it's, you know, I'm just so on the same page with you, Mel. I really love listening to what you're saying because, you know, I've been telling students for the longest time, life is a journey without a destination. So you may as well just participate in it and, you know, allow yourself to fall down and get up. And it's amazing, you know, when I look at parents and I listen to moms who are expecting their first child and how they talk about how it's going to be. And I just smile and chuckle, going, I can't tell you, you know, that it's not going to be at all what you think. It's going to take you on a journey that you never expected, but the most rewarding, powerful, remarkable journey of your life. And it will transform you. And, you know, the idea of when I look at my children, 3 of them are artists. And one of them is an athlete. And so just looking at the differences in them and the way they have made their way into the world. And my youngest, I was at her school a few weeks back, and she, at the end of our conversation, because she was contemplating dropping out of grade 12, and at the end of the conversation, she just looked at everybody and said, you know what, I've been taught that I'm unique and special, just like everybody else, and that I am capable of making really good decisions and looking after myself. I know who I am. I'm perfect, whole, and complete as I am. And the teachers are looking at each other going, maybe we need to listen to you more. So it was kind of a funny thing, but she's been raised with these spiritual principles and these ideas of who you are is sufficient to life. One of us unique and special. So it's powerful to get that sort of flung back, because you don't know sometimes if they're listening. But she's pretty remarkable as well. I love the way you parent, Mel, because ultimately it's the only thing we can do is let them be who they are.
Yeah. And I don't know many people who parent like you do and who think like you do. And that's why I think it's important for people to hear you speak, because it allows us to think about things differently, to have courageous conversations, to be okay with the mistakes we've made, and to learn from them and get up and keep going, and all those things, right? This is a place for courageous conversations. And so it's about bringing people together to have these conversations, to inspire others to shift perspectives.
Well, to think about things in a new way, I think is so important, because we tend to get into our habits, how we were raised. Because every now and again, I'll hear my mother speaking through my mouth, and I'm like, okay, let me back that up and start over. But it's, it's part of that journey is we tend to look at the world around us and try to fit in. And I think what I love about what you're saying, Mel, is you stand out and you allow your children to do the same thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because I remember reading a quote by Brene Brown years ago now, and she talks about the difference between fitting in and belonging. And fitting in is where we start to cut off aspects of ourselves.
Yes.
Kind of like puzzle pieces. You're going to need to look exactly like this to fit in here.
Yeah.
And belonging is when we show up as who we really are. And I think there's a difference between what emotion's coming up for us and showing up out of an emotion, and showing up as who we really are. Because for me, I was thinking about letting my kids be who they are has come with, like, freedom comes with it, a level of responsibility that we're not aware of. So to be who we really are, it is still drawing back to the indigenous wisdom of understanding, like, my personal truth then needs to go be tested within the bigger world against other truths. And how do we connect with one another, and how can I continue to grow and learn and change, which I think is part of that piece of how quickly can I say I was wrong and I don't know. Or for me, how I say it is I reserve the right to change my mind with new information. And then all the time, continuously, there's new information. There was, and the other piece that was making me smile, Barbara, as you were talking about, like, new moms starting with the journey, like, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna somehow, and it's like, yeah, it's gonna be a human journey. More fun for me right now is our kids are getting to the age where they're talking about how they're gonna parent differently. And so for me, it's like, I'm gonna have all these things, and it's gonna look so great, and I'm gonna do this different than you and that different than you. And I was thinking about it because it's like things. I saw a little reel yesterday, and it was about this maybe 20 something, early 20s, talking about, and here's the list of how I'm going to parent, and then this guy saying, oh no, you wait until your main thing that you're going to be saying to your kids is don't touch the dog's butthole. And it's like the amount of time I've spent on a repeat saying, have you wiped your bum? Go back and wipe it better. Like, these are the things where we think, like, somehow, and what I noticed, though, is that's like the first red flag. The danger is that we're somehow going to expect that if we do this thing, then our kids will be perfect. No, the mess is connective. The human journey is messy. We are learning through all of these challenging and potent times in our lives. And that's where, for me, the gift of my kids even wanting me to journey with them is how much space can I give them to journey those challenges and know that I'm there with them. But one of those pieces that's come up for me was something that changed when my own journey changed about 4 years ago. And it was noticing that all of us have, and particularly those of us who were raised with a really Christian upbringing, there's a narrative that is within us that we're unconsciously, it's unconsciously built into us. Some of it's conscious and some of it's not. And it's our narrative of what is good.
Yes, exactly.
And then if there is a narrative of what is good, then we can understand that there's also a narrative of what we say is bad. What's wild for me about that is, as I started to deconstruct my own personal narrative of what I said was good, and what I said was bad,
Mm.
I started to notice how quickly it was that my kids would not come to me then with things that I had consciously, unconsciously passed on to them as saying this is good and this is bad. And for example, one of the ones that I use most is this our relationship with anger. And
Mhm.
anger, there's righteous anger, and it can be very powerful and it can be very potent for change. And it can give us data and information. But for some of us, if we've been taught anger, that's you
Yeah.
can't feel that, then we can't even go into the place of what is this emotion for me. And there's a difference between being with an emotion and expressing that out, and how I act is my responsibility, but being able to feel and be with those different aspects of what's there. And so that shit and magnificence, the messy parts of us and the brilliant parts of us that are all part of us, then for me, it's become creating a new narrative of realness. And a moment where that came really powerful for me was my son texting me and saying, "Hey, Mom, I need to talk with you about some of my shit." And I was like, amazing that he had language then. And because I could be honest enough about my struggle and my magnificence, both in tension with one another, that he then could reveal something about himself that may have been shame inducing or pain inducing or something he's not proud of. And those moments where we witness and presence one another in what we think is wrong or bad or whatever with us, and then we bring that into the light and we can look at that and be loved and cared about and seen in that human experience. Those are the transformative moments when we
Those are,
don't take
yeah.
from one another our experiences, where we don't fix, rescue, advice give, where we don't co-opt the experience and make it about us, where we don't hijack and hotwire and say, here's how I've experienced the same. We're the same. And we simply say, I'm here with you.
I'm here with
I'm here with you.
We need to take a little commercial break, and you're watching Spirit Cafe, and we are having one dynamic conversation today. So don't go away. We will be right back. And we're back. So, Mel, one of the things that really stands out in this conversation is holding space for our children and also for ourselves to be the best that we can be. And to know that we are going to fall down and that we do have the resiliency to get back up. And I think if we put a little less weight on, oh no, I fell down and now I'm out of the game, but rather going, well, I skinned my knees, but this too will heal. I think, that for me is one of the really precious moments that you've shared, that willingness to fall down and get back up.
The irony too is that wisdom, knowledge, experience actually comes from working in congregations.
Yes.
And noticing the ways for which we begin to co-opt one another's experiences and look for, again, some sort of, we need to look a certain way. We need to be a certain way, rather than you can have room here. Imagine what would happen in spiritual communities, organized, basically any gatherings, if we gave one another space, room to fall down, to get back up, to own that, to apologize, to make amends, to be in that human journey, and to be with that in the same grace-filled, potent, powerful way as we're with those high times, right?
Absolutely.
Like that piece of our humanness. And then what happens is this whole idea of the difference between fitting and belonging is we just start to say, oh, so these aspects of me can't show up here. And the problem for some of us, definitely for me, was then I was almost like, once I cut out the parts of me that I knew didn't fit, I just was like Swiss cheese.
What's left? Yeah.
That's a good, sorry. That's a good analogy. There's one thing that I got from the end of our conversation and before break, and from what you're saying now, is that we can have relationships, but we are not being in relationship. And so the depth of the relationship, right? We have many relationships, but there's no depth. How many relationships, family or friends, do we have where there is that depth that you're talking about, that presence, that being with, and that journeying alongside or with that person?
Well, and it's asking ourselves, what is in the way of the depth? And I would suggest that for me, at least in my own life, it was my aversion to looking at my own stuff, my own shit. So I don't want to be seen that way. So I'm just going to keep disconnecting from that, cutting that off, rather than integrating. And the irony is that for most of us, when we actually do simply say, and here is the thing that I most feared, and we have that witnessed by somebody else who does skillfully understand what it looks like to be present and hold space, it transforms. And those very things that we think are what make us outcasts or different are the very things that make us connective, magnificent, powerful. This idea, I really do value the beauty in the brokenness, understanding that it's, for me, been looking at it, and that, you know, I've questioned sometimes, particularly as I now hit my mid-40s, that is this a midlife crisis or an awakening? And I wonder how many of us get to this point where the universe is saying, come on back to yourself, darling. Come on back. Stop. Do not take one more step outside of yourself. Step in. Go down the staircase of yourself into the womb of who you are. That's terrifying and beautiful and magnificent, powerful and transformative. It's all sitting right there within us. Look, and that when we look, we know that the amount of judging that heals within me when I look at myself, it just comes naturally. That I'm like, oh, you have shit too. Yeah, me too. Yeah. Let's be in this. And what does being my true, most authentic self really mean?
Yeah.
It's powerful to look at it that way. And I think one of the things that I've noticed in working with congregations, as you suggested earlier, how that can really help us to see things, is that so often when something comes up, people immediately want to defend their position. And I often say that defense is offense. And so it's going to immediately create conflict when we move into that place. And I've had the wonderful experience of stepping in it lots of times and couple of years ago in pastoring a Black church, I said something from the pulpit that as soon as it came out of my mouth, I knew it was wrong. Like what I said was, this was not the place to say it, for sure. And sure enough, one of the members of the congregation came up to me and said, "Do you really think that was appropriate for this audience?" And my response was, "No, it wasn't."
Mm-hmm.
And that gave her the space to then share with me her journey.
Yeah.
And we deepened our relationship
Yeah.
because I didn't defend what I said. I knew what I said, that really wasn't the audience for it.
Yeah.
But we're going to do stuff like that. We're going to say things that are going to be taken in ways that maybe we didn't mean, or they're going to be misunderstood. And I think when we can allow ourselves to be vulnerable and admit that, we're learning, we don't know it all.
Yeah.
I think that's truly powerful.
And see them as opportunities, right? I'll just share a quick story. And I know my mom wouldn't mind me sharing this here. When she was here last year, something happened that triggered me, and I am not proud of my reaction and the words I used. And it caused, some discomfort between us. We each had our own thoughts, and, they're never the same. They're never on the same level even. And we decided one day to go for coffee. So we were out of this, this comfort. We were in a neutral environment, and we had a conversation about, I was trying to think about what was it in me that I reacted that way. Where did that come from? What pain or childhood memory or whatever it was triggering that. Anyway, we really had a heart-to-heart conversation, and I was able to share things about my childhood that I experienced a certain way, and she was able to respond to that with what she was thinking at the time and what she was going through, and it was so. I'm so glad we got to do that, and this is the thing about relationships and not having these deeper conversations. We really miss out on opportunities, and when that person is gone, it's too late, right? So I'm just so glad that we were able to go there, and hopefully it will allow us to do more of that if we need to, because we know we can, right? But it took, I'm 60. I just turned 60, right?
Ooh, happy birthday.
I'm a grandmother. And that's how long it took for me to have that conversation with her.
There's two thoughts that are sitting with me. The first one, whether it's our chosen family, our birth family, community, it is for me about changing the narrative that we're somehow going to get to this place where everyone's going to show up the way that we want them to, right? That the actual lab of life is that isn't going to happen, right? We're going to meet people. Every community we're going to join, going to be humans there. So it's going to be a mix. Every family, chosen or birth, going to be humans there. So it's going to be a mix.
Yeah.
And so that first piece of really embracing that, we then start to embrace ourselves. The second piece that's coming up into my awareness is the part of me that really, really wanted to have, all of us have this wounded child. So the child wound, and how we want for other people to be the healer of our wounded child, and how potent it is both to be witnessed by and presenced by another, but also that I am not who I was. So those wounded aspects of my child can now be held by this adult version of me. And I can learn how to create more space for that. And when we make more space for that, that's where the healing happens, is when we're able to say, okay, little one, what is this about? And talk with these aspects of ourselves as though they're a baby, right? Hey, what do you need? What's going on for you? And to become curious. And that when we do that, Barbara, your comment about how quickly we go on the defensive or how quickly we move into our positions. And in mediation, we know that it's actually moving away from our position back to what is our common interest,
Yeah.
right? And whether it's family or spiritual community, it's, wow, these people are showing up to go through this challenging stuff, to be with me in these joys. This is a gift. How can I show up holding that gift of the presence of the people in front of me, particularly in those challenging times?
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, because I mean, the thing is, like you say, wherever you go, there's going to be people there, and we're all going to have, different perspectives on what's going on, and we all can take a look at this recording today, and our perspectives will be completely different on a number of points. It doesn't mean somebody's right and somebody's wrong. It just means, given our history, and just like with, healing some of the wounds with our Indigenous people and the Black communities. We don't heal those wounds by, burying our head in the sand or blaming somebody else, but rather becoming consciously aware of our own personal biases and our own personal perceptions. And as we come to understand somebody else's journey, or to look at it at least, we start to develop a curiosity about who these people really are and who I really am. And as a result, who can we be together? And I think that's part of that human journey, is taking the time, like you said, with your kids, is about presence. Can we be present with each other? And you mentioned something earlier about, when somebody's crying or whatever, and immediately somebody wants to go up and put their arm around them and stop them from crying. And I think it's so powerful to just let the tears flow and to hold space for the person to just have their experience, whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the space to have experiences without taking that on or taking that away. The space to have experiences without taking that on or taking that away. I think that's a real, like, that's like the dance. And that we're taught, particularly in a colonial world, to move away from ourselves, to move out of our body, out of our feelings. Yet this is our adventure suit. This is what we have. And our body is this incredible potency of feelings and sensations, and what am I connecting with? But I think that so oftentimes when we sense discomfort within ourselves, we look to alleviate that.
Yes.
And rather than going, "Ooh, what are you about? What are you teaching me?" And again, we would slow down with our expectations on one another if we were doing that in our work, because that is time consuming to actually be with oneself. And that's where, for me, the power of breath, of meditation, of prayerful intention has become so potent, because it's like a divine connector and a very potent timeout. And we culturally want to fill all the space rather than creating space and becoming a witness to our own experience, a witness to one another, and watching. And can we just watch? And it was the first year I went to an outdoor solstice event, and was thinking about the wisdom of winter, of this season that is upon us, to rest, to reflect, to slow down, to go within, to kindle the inner fire, to breathe and center. And then I was thinking, it was December 20th or 21st, and I was thinking about how our world, our society, busy sidewalks, city sidewalks, dressed in holiday style. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. And I was like, whoa, I'm slow enough this year to notice that we're actually reflecting the mere opposite of the wisdom of the earth. Wisdom of the earth is saying rest, and we're saying go, 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 go. And at some point, when we move back into the practices, meditation, prayer, gathering for community, gathering for community, not for something, to see ourselves as in connection with. The shift is natural when we see ourselves as part of even the hard stuff. Connection occurs, and yet how like contrasting is that experience of the month of December. Winter says slow down, and we speed up, and winter says rest, and we fill all the space. And so for me, it is about space. How am I interacting with the space? Who am I in this space? What is showing up for me within that space? Yeah.
Well, it's so interesting because every now and again I'll have congregants come to me and go, nothing's happening in my business right now. It's like I was doing really well and now everything's slowed down. And it's like, and I use the seasons as an example, like you just did. Even the earth knows there has to be a time of rest. This is your time of rest. Renew, relax, allow, and the doors will reopen, but you need to rest, right? I think that's such a great message for most of us. Take time to breathe.
Yeah.
And do we need to be in crisis in order to take that breath?
Oh gosh, no.
Right? Like that's the piece that I find so interesting, is that we will bypass all these different signs within ourselves and then finally get to the crisis point and feel like the only way we can say, hey, I need a break, is to be in crisis, versus I need a break because I'm human. I can't do it all because nobody was ever meant to. Not everyone's going to like me. It's not realistic that 7 billion people are all going to like me. This is okay, right? These processes, these pieces are okay. And I was thinking how interesting, because that colonial piece with the people you're talking with is part of it, right? Which is you got to stay busy, and our productivity, who we are as and what we do as a measure of our worth, exhaustion as a status symbol. And then we teach that, and we pass that on to our kids, and we pass that on to one another, as though it's almost as though that's like the poison, right? And the piece is who we are. Like, imagine, I was thinking about, to tie back to that idea of uniqueness.
Yeah.
It's getting back to the point of what is your innate gift? What do you bring to the world? Not what you do, but what do you bring to the world? And with our kids, one of the things that I've noticed is they've come out so different from one another. So I've parented, clearly I'm not the common denominator, right? Because they've come out so different from one another, but they're bringing precisely what they're meant to when they're given space to actually figure out who they are and space to be real. Right? Rather than that idea of this limiting idea of good or bad, but just what is real for you right now. And imagine if we could be real with one another, that we moved away from these hi, how are you, fine narratives, and said, hey, I know all of us are fighting some sort of a battle. We do not have to know what one another's battles are to know we're fighting some sort of a battle. Hey, I'm here with you. How are you?
Yeah. And that idea of good and bad, and I'm always astounded, you turn on the television and they're not going to show a woman's breasts, but they will show somebody being shot in the head. And I go, what kind of mistake is that? Or I was in the Chicago airport and they created these little closed in pods for women to breastfeed. And I thought, why do I need to hide that? Why do I need to go into this little tiny box in order that nobody see the evils of breastfeeding? As a parent, I breastfed my daughter in board meetings. Like, I was running a center. I had to be at work and she came with me. I think there's a confusion about good and bad and right and wrong. And I think if we sort of come to find our own path and our own rhythm and I think there needs to be a shift in how we judge things, because it's not accurate. It's perception.
I think we've moved away from our connection that we had as communities, that lived together and did things together, and even families, right? We've become sort of, I don't know what you call them when there's just like two people and their kids, and that's the extended family is not even considered part of the family anymore. And that's caused this disconnect, which I think is, obviously playing out the way it is in this world. And so it's really about coming back to that connection. It's reconnecting, remembering. We talk about oneness. We are one. It doesn't mean we're the same, right? We're talking about uniqueness, unique expressions of the oneness, and bringing those gifts that we each bring. But how do we use them? How do we even know what they are anymore when we're not in community with others to be able to develop them? So, yeah, just wow. What a powerful, wonderful conversation. Just lovely. Thank you so much, Mel.
Yeah, there's one piece when you were talking about remembering that I was hearing it as like putting back together the aspects of myself, right? And part of that is a reclamation of the things that were devalued when our colonial world said what was valuable. So for me, an example is a valuing of institutionalized learning.
Yeah.
It's valuable. That's not the conversation. And oral tradition, passed down, creativity, noticing, wondering, our connection with things, also valuable learning.
Yeah.
Travel, also valuable learning, and traveling within the self, valuable learning. So it's revaluing who we are and what we bring by, again, stretching out what we've said is valuable, to start to see value in the many ways we show up, the many ways of learning, the many ways of being, the many ways of connecting. There's just so many ways, but we get there in part by remembering. So my Swiss cheese self, putting back those pieces I said don't belong.
Yeah.
And then owning them in a world that may say, hey, you can't be that here. The script says.
Yeah.
And so more of us start to say, I don't live by a script. I have tools, intuition, the capacity to feel, the capacity to be in these tough moments in that way. And there's a quote that I'm just going to seal this off with by Martin Buber. All journeys have a secret destination for which the traveler is unaware. All journeys have a secret destination for which the traveler is unaware. And so for me as a parent, then it has been understanding too that my kids have journeys for which I am not meant to protect them from that journey. I'm meant to be with them on that journey. And my capability to do that will be about how well I can walk with them during not only those great times in life, but those challenging times. And imagine if we started to do that with one another, what would happen?
And if we did it for ourselves. And ultimately, when I'm willing to walk in my shoes, like you said earlier, that's in the moment when I'm willing to sort of see everyone else doing their little something in their unique way and being okay with it. We got about a minute left. Cheryl, final thought.
Just that we could carry on and on and on. And it just has been such a wonderful, deep conversation. There's so much richness in there. I certainly will go and watch it again and invite others too, because I think, each time it sparks something in me. But then I realized, what she said there was rich. That was huge. I got to go back and just, how can I say, when you taste something and you savor, thank you, savor it, like feel it and be in it. And just so grateful, Mel. And I so look forward to future conversations that we will be having as we have scheduled another date. So thank you so much.
Yeah. So Mel is back the first Wednesday in April. So be sure to join us then. Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Deja, for producing this. Have a wonderful week, everybody. You've been watching Spirit Cafe, and we invite you to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time.
See you next week.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.